Thank you for 20 years of Get With the Guidelines. We've got a lot to celebrate, and we're so happy you're here. Here are a few of the things we've accomplished together. Together, we've tracked more than 10 million patients. Data has been used in more than 600 scientific publications. Since 2016 alone, we've given out almost 32,000 awards to participating hospitals. None of this would be possible without you. If you're one of the nearly 2,500 plus hospitals across the United States and Puerto Rico to implement Get With the Guidelines, thank you for your outstanding performance treating patients with heart disease and stroke with the highest quality care. Get With the Guidelines helps healthcare professionals improve patient outcomes by applying the most up-to-date, evidence-based treatment guidelines. Whether those guidelines are for stroke, heart failure, resuscitation, AFib, or coronary artery disease, hospitals that encourage their consistent use help patients do better. That's quality improvement, and it's what we're all about. Thank you, and here's to the next 20 years together. Thank you for 20 years of Get With the Guidelines.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Aiello-Sapio, Executive Vice President of the American Heart Association's Eastern States region, which serves over 74 million people across 13 states in the District of Columbia, from Maine to Virginia. Welcome to our Get With the Guidelines Stroke Recognition event. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce our two Masters of Ceremonies and beloved MCs, Dr. Lee Schwamm, Chair of the AHA's Stroke Systems of Care Advisory Group, and joining Lee today as our incoming chair to receive the torch passed from Dr. Schwamm, incoming chair, Dr. Stephen Messe. Dr. Schwamm serves as the Vice President for Virtual Care at Mass General Brigham, Director for the Center for Telehealth at Mass General Hospital, and the C. Miller Fisher Chair in Vascular Neurology and Professor of Neurology at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Messe serves as the Associate Director, Vascular Neurology Fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania and Professor of Neurology at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. It's so good to see you both. Thank you for leading us through our reception today.
Thank you, Nicole. It's great to see you on the video. It's great to be here with all of you in the Eastern States. I'm sorry that we can't be here together in person. It's great that you're taking out time from the middle of your day to be with us. And I know normally it would be evening. You'd be in ball gowns. We'd be in a big ballroom, and I'd be wearing a silly hat or some other ridiculous costume. But, this is COVID, and we're getting used to doing things a little bit differently. So today, you might be celebrating this award during your lunch break before you go back to the business of saving lives. Maybe, some of your colleagues are not able to join today, so we're recording the program, and they'll be able to see what we talk about today, see their hospital team recognized, and share the link with anyone who can't attend so they can view it later. I'm really excited that we have some special people with us today. I'm looking forward to co-hosting this with my colleague, Stephen Messe. Wonderful to have Nicole here with us, and the not so newly formed Eastern States region now. There's been a lot of consolidation, and we keep getting bigger and stronger. So we're really excited about that. And we have a very special guest with us, an extraordinary partner in our relentless efforts to prevent and treat stroke, and that's Lisa Deck. And we'll also have a special message from our CEO, Nancy Brown. Steve, would you like to add anything?
Thanks, Lee. It's great to be here with you, and Nicole, thank you. On behalf of all the volunteers and staff at the American Heart Association, I want to thank each of you for the work that you do. You've displayed relentless commitment to quality care, especially during this incredibly challenging time, and it really is appreciated and celebrated today and every day. As Lee noted, we usually have the opportunity to present you with a certificate, have you come up on stage, and we get to shake your hands. Of course, we're doing this virtually this year. And so the way we're going to do this is that we'll have the photos of the teams presented on the split screen as we're going through the rest of the event today. It will be presented in alphabetical order.
Hi,
so
I'm Nancy
try to
Brown,
pay
CEO.
attention for when that's coming up. And definitely we encourage you to share some shout outs in the chat to celebrate your recognition with your colleagues. And I want to say, Lee, I think it's well recognized and established that the East is the best region. So we've got that going for us.
Oh, and I do want to say, Steve, I just want to say, normally people bring me up, beer and hand sanitizer, all sorts of little gifts. So maybe we'll put my mailing address at the bottom of the screen and they can just send me the, 6 packs.
No doubt. You well deserved. All right. So we are going to get started now. We're going to have a message from American Heart Association CEO Nancy Brown.
Hi, I'm Nancy Brown, CEO of the American Heart Association. Thank you so much for joining us today and for powering our mission to be a relentless force for a world of longer, healthier lives. Science and research are the bedrock of the American Heart Association, and a key pillar of our work in bringing science to life is our Get With the Guidelines Quality Improvement Program. We launched the program in the year 2000 to assure that patients with coronary artery disease received high-quality, evidence-based care during their hospital stay. Over the past 2 decades, Get With the Guidelines has expanded to include heart failure, stroke, atrial fibrillation, and most recently, the COVID-19 cardiovascular disease registry. Stroke is the largest of our Get With the Guidelines programs, with more than 80% of every stroke that happens in this country captured in our registry. In just over 2 decades, you, our valued partners in hospitals across the country, have collected data from more than 10 million patients, profoundly deepening scientific understanding of cardiovascular disease. This work is more important than ever as the world confronts COVID-19 because severe outcomes are most common in people with a history of risk factors for heart disease or stroke. Hardest hit are Black, Hispanic, and Indigenous individuals living in under-resourced communities. As a champion of health equity, the American Heart Association is leveraging its voice, our platform, and our resources to identify and remove barriers to healthy living. Our Don't Die of Doubt campaign informs the public that hospitals are still the safest place to be in a medical emergency, as we urge people to call 911 at the first sign of a stroke or a heart attack. As a founding supporter of the Ad Council campaign to encourage COVID-19 vaccination, we are boosting public confidence and helping to keep people safe. We are also encouraging everyone to get their flu vaccination and schedule routine and preventative care. In 12 months since launching a 3-year hemorrhagic stroke initiative with Alexion, we have identified best practices and additional insights that we look forward to sharing across the country. None of this would be possible without your heroic efforts on the front line of stroke care. During an extraordinarily challenging year, you have displayed uncommon courage, collaboration, and clinical excellence. On behalf of all of us at the American Heart Association, thank you for your dedication to ensuring all people have the opportunity to live a longer, healthier life.
Well, that was a wonderful message from our CEO, Nancy Brown, and I know she means that really deeply because she and I, when we talk about these issues, has really been committed to the Get With the Guidelines stroke program and the impact that it has had on the communities that we serve. I'd like to take this opportunity now to reintroduce to you our friend and colleague, Nicole Cepeo, who is the Executive Vice President for the Eastern States region and who guides our work in the AHA across that region. So Nicole, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lee and Steve. Again, just such an honor to be here today, to be able to really have the opportunity to thank and to recognize the incredible life-saving work done by the many health professionals joining us today. Thank you all for taking the time to attend. Your leadership and participation in AHA's quality programs and your commitment to quality stroke care are saving lives and improving outcomes. stroke patients. As our CEO, Nancy Brown, mentioned, the incredible and extraordinary impact that your work has had over the last 2 decades. More than 80% of strokes that occur in our country are captured in our registry. That critical data on more than 10 million patients moves science forward and improves the lives of so many. Truly something to pause and celebrate. It's really wonderful to see the hospitals that we're scrolling. And I want to add my congratulations on behalf of our entire team to the 444 Eastern states Get With the Guidelines stroke hospitals who achieved 1,451 stroke awards for 2019-2020. These awards truly represent your commitment to guideline-directed care for every eligible stroke patient, ultimately saving lives and improving patient outcomes. I also want to pause for a moment and acknowledge our hospitals that serve our Eastern states communities, as you were really the first to be so gravely impacted by the pandemic. Over the past year, the rapid surge of COVID-19 patients created new challenges for treating stroke patients. You met those challenges of new COVID-19 testing and PPE protocols, new stroke transport and triage protocols, uncertainties of treating stroke patients with COVID-19, and the hesitancy of patients to call 911 or go to the hospital. I am so grateful to each of you to be a part of your community. And we honor you for facing these challenges head on and working together as systems and regions to develop and test new protocols and treatments to help others to be better prepared and improve the overall stroke care for your patients while dealing with such unprecedented circumstances. Again, we thank you. Working with your systems, we are leveraging our voices and platforms to promote messaging that hospitals are the safest place to be in a medical emergency. We are reminding our communities to call 911 at the first sign of stroke and to schedule their COVID-19 vaccine and routine medical care. Next year, we remain so hopeful and optimistic that we will once again be able to gather together in person in New Orleans to celebrate at our annual recognition dinner. Until then, on behalf of the American Heart Association, thank you for your resounding commitment to the communities that you serve and the patients you treat. And now it's my pleasure to introduce a very special guest, Lisa Deck. Lisa has been a well-known volunteer with the AHA for many years. Lisa is always so generous in sharing her story, from serving as a national Go Red for Women spokesperson to helping advocate for health policy change with elected officials on behalf of our mission. When we talk about being relentless together, we need to look no further than to Lisa for her incredible tenacity in surviving not only 3 strokes in her 20s, but also a rare cardiovascular condition that required multiple procedures to bring Lisa here to today's celebration with us. Lisa, you are someone who inspires me, who I know inspires us all. Please join me in welcoming Lisa.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you to Dr. Schwamm and Dr. Messe for having me here today. It is truly an honor to be able to share my story with all of you who are really on the front lines and leading the charge against stroke. I think you might have taken all my high points in my description, but let me go ahead and tell you my story. It's interesting because the new tagline for the Heart Association, being a relentless force for a world of longer and healthier lives. I've had to learn how to be relentless. And because of the American Heart Association and the science and research that exists, I have had a longer life, and I'm so thankful for that. But let me start at the beginning. I was 21 years old when I was about to graduate from college in Washington, D.C., and I suddenly had a terrible headache, and my side was numb. It was my arm, it was my face. Eventually, it became my leg, and I was concerned. I decided I better go to the hospital. So friends brought me to a local hospital, and they checked me out. I was a healthy, seemingly healthy, 21-year-old, and they sent me home. They told me that it was just a migraine, and it was because of stress. And this was my beginning experience with healthcare. Fortunately, I didn't take that as an answer, primarily because my face then went numb and I had trouble speaking and the pain got worse. It was at that next hospital I was diagnosed with a stroke. Shocking is a very small word for that. Having to call my parents living 8 hours away to fly down to help me, that was really challenging. At this point, they couldn't figure out what was causing the stroke. The symptoms did go away. I was able to graduate about a week later, although it's a blur. And that began my story of stroke. For a couple months, I went through occupational therapy. I regained use of my hand, and I was eventually ready to start work. It was 6 weeks into my first job when I had the same symptoms. I brought myself back to the hospital, and I would stay there for weeks until they could determine a cause. At that time, I was diagnosed with central nervous system vasculitis, and my treatment was very aggressive. Blood thinners, chemotherapy, prednisone. It was very, very, very challenging time. And while that worked for a couple of years, it did provide many, many side effects. I went through menopause. I lost my hair. I gained weight. I had high blood pressure. I had high cholesterol. Very, very taxing time. But fortunately, I survived. I did have a third stroke in 2000, so at age 25. It was at that point that I moved home and decided to get help from my parents. The doctors also took me out of work, and I was placed on disability. It was a very sad time. Fortunately, a few months later, I was declared in remission of the disease, and the strokes were stopped for now. At this point, this is when I became a volunteer. This was 20 years ago, and I became a volunteer with the Heart Association. I signed up to walk a half marathon, and I did that in Disney World, which was pretty cool because there was times I couldn't walk. I raised money as well, and I had a celebration of life. So I first came into the Heart Association to raise money, and I like to think back that perhaps some of that money I raised 20 years ago went into the research that saved me just recently. That might not be true, but I like that idea. So in this time, I became a volunteer. I worked in the advocacy office of the Heart Association. I did speaking engagements, kind of anything that was asked, I would say yes, and I would do different things. And I also was married, and we would grow our family to a family of 4. So at this point, my life is pretty stable. I was still having TIAs. I was still having headaches. I was very fatigued, but I just thought that was the result of the strokes. The year was now 2014, and fortunately with the American Heart Association, I was asked to be a national spokesperson for the Go Red for Women movement. And I was really thrilled that stroke was going to be discussed at the national level. I was very happy to see that because as the years went on, stroke was becoming more and more recognized. I appreciated that. And I took this responsibility and started a blog and decided to share my experiences as a spokesperson, only to have the same symptoms from 14 years prior come back. My side went numb and I had a headache. Normally, if I rested, that would take care of it. In this case, it didn't. I decided to take my own advice and I went to the hospital. I still was shocked that I was having a 4th stroke. Now this is a different situation because I'm not a 20-something. I am a 39-year-old mother of 2. So it's not just me, it's my kids. They were 4 and 6 at the time. I was diagnosed with a stroke. I then had an MRI, and I would soon learn that I actually have moyamoya disease. It is a rare brain disease. I hope many of you have heard of it, but it is a narrowing of the middle cerebral artery. Moyamoya means puff of smoke in Japanese. So the collateral vessels that grow look like a puff of smoke on imaging. There is no cure for moyamoya disease, but there is a treatment. And for me, the treatment would mean 2 brain surgeries. I would eventually travel to California to a neurosurgeon who completed 2 brain surgeries for me. I often don't talk about this part of the story because it's somewhat of a blur. There was pain, there was side effects. I had speech issues. I was away from my children for a month. It was very challenging. I did make it home, and eventually I would learn that my surgeries were successful. And the coolest point, I think, is that I then had 7 more times the blood flow in my brain. So since then, I'm doing well. There was mental health struggles afterwards, emotional health struggles, but I'm so fortunate to be a volunteer. I still work with the Heart Association. It's been 20 years since I volunteered. I attend lobby days. I speak at events. I am on the advocacy board. I eventually started a nonprofit. I recently spoke in Tokyo, Japan, which was so cool because that's where Moya Moya originated. I have a new mission. I'm a rare disease advocate. I am a board member for the Moya Moya Foundation and Rare New England. And I recently wrote a book, Faces of Moya Moya Disease, to share the experiences of Moya Moya disease. We'll be hosting an event in May for World Moya Moya Day. And I've been so lucky to have all these opportunities. So again, thank you to each of you for what you do, your leadership, your care for patients like me, and please continue to be a leading force in our fight against heart disease and stroke. Thank you.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure it's never easy, even though you've done it 100 times. And I think, to me, you represent one of the important messages in your story is you represent this role, this incredibly important role for patient engagement, for being your own advocate, for always asking why, and really being your own relentless force for a longer, healthier life. We can't do this alone. We can't just expect the medical system to take care of us. We have to be part of our care. And I think we could all learn a lot from your story and really following your example of engagement. So thank you so much for sharing that. Steve, you want to come off mute and maybe then we'll join together and walk through some slides?
All right, I'm here with you, Lee.
Excellent. So maybe we could ask for the slides to come up. Terrific. And if we can have, so welcome to this virtual wonderland of joy. Steve, you may want to pin the live stream on your screen so you can see the slides a little bit better. I just did that.
That helps. Good idea.
So we're here with the Get With the Guidelines Stroke Virtual Quality Achievement Awards. So let's go to our first slide. So here you have me over there on the left. Been doing this now on, I think, almost 20 years. And I remember our first few events, there were about 7 people sitting on, upholstered chairs in a small hotel room conference room for 10 people, but we've grown a lot. And I'm delighted, next slide, to say that not only is Steve co-hosting this event with me, but I have passed the crown. I kneel before the new king, and Steve is taking over as the chair of the Stroke Systems of Care Advisory Group. So congratulations, Steve.
Well, Lee, thank you for this opportunity, and honestly, for all of the incredible leadership and hard work that you've done over the years. 20 years is incredible, and really, what Get With the Guidelines Stroke has become, is just there aren't words to describe how important it is. I think, honestly, to stroke care in the U.S. and so really, I think that a lot of that is due to your hard work. And so again, thank you for that.
How did you manage to time it so that University of Pennsylvania hospitals appeared magically right as you started talking? I didn't see much general show up when I was talking.
I've worked on that for the past couple of days to get that just right, and it really came off pretty good. So thanks for noticing.
All right, next slide. This is the theme, I think, of the year, right, Steve? I mean, we talk about a year of challenge and just the relentless pursuit of giving the best possible stroke care. It would have been easy to give up, sit back on your heels, just say, it's not worth the risk, or this is too difficult. But you all took care of the patients. You put the data in the Get With the Guidelines patient management tool so that we could collectively understand what was happening across the country with COVID and stroke care. And we'll share some data with you later in the slides that show that. Really, what an exceptional and extraordinary year and incredible. All the frontline workers, all of you deserve just our gratitude and our admiration.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lee. Relentless, I think that's been one of the taglines for the AHA for a little bit of time now, but this relentless together was really meaningful this year. It really required all of us to work together to get through this tough year. And so, please, in the chat box, feel free to shout out times when you've been working with your colleagues together and making a difference.
Next slide, I think, really highlights the fact that, if there ever was a year of the nurse, boy, it was this year. And I know so many of you, in the audience or the virtual audience are trained in nursing, and your participation in the program stems from your commitment to stroke nursing care. And boy, it was quite a year, and our nurses bore the brunt of this pandemic in a way that I will never forget. And I so admire our nursing colleagues. Everyone worked hard, the doctors, the radiology techs, the front desk registration people. But I think a special tip of the hat to our nurses is really in order, Steve.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in my mind, the nurses are always the tip of the spear for patient care, and they do carry much of the burden. And this year was just incredibly difficult, and of course, it all almost all fell on them. And so I agree, they deserve much gratitude for that.
Great. Next slide. So some big news this year. Steve, you want to run through this slide?
Sure. So, this is a great thing that that Get With The Guidelines is offering, is that you can link your Get With The Guideline measures to make it publicly reportable and to be in other methodologies such as U.S. News and World Report. So this has been growing. It's obviously very popular. 954 previously, and now 1,552 hospitals are participating in this feature, and we're going to be enrolling again in May. So I expect that's going to continue to expand.
Wonderful. Next slide. And look at the program enrollment. I wish my 401k looked like this, Steve.
Oh, yes. This is impressive. This is really incredible. I think Nancy Brown mentioned this, but 660,000 cases is over 80% of the incident strokes in the United States. And we really are capturing the vast majority of all the strokes that are happening in the United States and making sure that they're getting the best care possible.
Yeah, 7 million. That's just it's an amazing number. Next slide. And our quality research publications, we bounce around a bit year to year. Looks like everyone does an amazing job for a year and then poops out and has to take a break. Some of that's due to the nature of when the proposals are submitted and when the results come back from DCRI. But again, an extraordinary 150 publications. It's become one of the most important reservoirs of understanding about stroke care and adoption of new care patterns. Lots of papers showing how TPA was adopted, how times were improved, how thrombectomy is adopted, and most recently, we'll show you in a few minutes, racial and ethnic disparities in the delivery of care. So just an incredible resource made possible every day by each and every one of you who's providing great care for the patients, using that tool to help you guide your care at your own institution, but contributing to this much larger effort.
Yeah, this data is incredibly impactful in the stroke field and has an impact on patient care. And it's really a wonderful thing that Get With The Guidelines is able to provide.
Next slide. So the COVID-19 registry and several papers presented at the International Stroke Conference really represent major accomplishments of this year. There are so many accomplishments every year, but we thought we would highlight just a few. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about the stroke-specific measures. So this is a paper that was just published. It looked at 41,000 patients with ischemic stroke who were negative with COVID-19, who positive for COVID-19, 41,000 patients, 101,143 with COVID, 40,000 without COVID who were cared for between February and June at almost 500 sites. So small number of COVID positive patients, but an opportunity really to look at differences between them. And you can see that those with COVID-19 were younger, they were more likely to be non-white, they had higher stroke severity and a greater proportion of large vessel occlusions. But reassuringly, the rates of TPA and thrombectomy were similar between the two groups, but times were longer, not surprising because of the needs for personal protection equipment and greater coordination. And also, quite frankly, at my hospital, the fact that families weren't allowed in to the emergency rooms, that we were blocking almost all visitors, meant that it was harder to get some of that information that you needed. And then if you looked at adjusted analyses, those patients who had stroke in the setting of COVID, they had a decreased odds of being discharged with without disability, so a modified Rankin of less than 2, and an increased odds of dying in the hospital, pretty substantial increased odds, almost 4-fold increase. So younger age, greater stroke severity, longer times between evaluation and treatment, and worse morbidity and mortality occurred in patients who had acute ischemic stroke with COVID-19 compared to those without. Next slide, I think, shows, here's a really nice graphic just kind of summarizing again what I said. And it was a pretty substantial difference, Steve. The patients without COVID had a median NIH of 4. The ones with COVID had an NIH of 8. So really representing the fact that we saw a real shift in stroke severity in that group. I don't know what your experiences were like.
I think that's absolutely right. And just being in the hospital was more common in the patients who had stroke related to COVID. And I do want to point out something that's really, really important, that the patients who had COVID-related stroke while also having COVID had similar thrombolytic use, similar use of endovascular therapy, and the achievement measures, forget what the guideline, were similar whether you had COVID or not. And again, that's just a huge testament to the frontline workers and the care that was given to patients during the time of COVID to be able to do that with all the challenges that came along with COVID. So that is something we should all be very proud of.
And I think it shows you the power of system-based care, right? When you're working with a playbook and it's race blind, it's payer blind, and it's COVID blind. So you do the work you need to do because you have a playbook that supports you in that. Next slide. So if you look at these individuals, another interesting fact here is just, not surprisingly, the need for additional personal protective equipment had a big impact in the COVID patients and obviously not in the non-COVID patients. But things like hypertension requiring, aggressive control with IV medications wasn't that relevant in the COVID patients as it was in the non-COVID patients. So these are reasons why patients didn't end up being able to receive IV TPA on time, or when there was a delay, or they didn't receive it at all. Next slide. And then this is a paper from Dr. Sharif, one of our former fellows, who showed that in this graph you can see that there's an increase in the rates of thrombectomy use in all groups, but there's still a gap between non-Hispanic whites and blacks in the pre versus post-2015 era, but it's shrinking, which again is wonderful and very reassuring. Short-term outcomes like discharge to home, discharge to hospice, or mortality were actually slightly better in minority patients, blacks, Asians, and Hispanics. The modified Rankin at discharge and ambulation ability at discharge was no different. Interestingly, 90-day modified Rankin scores were worse in the Black and Asian patients, and this speaks to the importance of social determinants of health and things that we don't actually have a lot of information about. We don't know a lot about the post-discharge care, what happens after Get With the Guidelines, and that's an area where I think we need to increasingly focus as we go forward. Any thoughts, Steve?
No, I totally agree. I think that highlights some important findings with regard to inequities, particularly in the post-hospitalization setting. So hopefully we'll be able to make inroads there as well.
Great. Next slide. And look at this. I mean, isn't this amazing? Despite the presence of COVID, look at the increase in the proportion of patients getting TPA within the first 4.5 hours. And next slide, even more impressive. Look at the proportion of patients getting TPA within 30 minutes. I mean, from 3% to 20% to 27.8% during a year when we had COVID around us. And again, you all should be taking a little bow, whether or not the name of your hospital's up there on the screen. And I got to tell you, Steve, we're doing pretty well because we've made it to W.
That's
so
good.
We're getting near the end of the scroll, but we haven't gotten to Zebra Health System yet. So I think our timing is working out pretty well here. Any comments?
I totally agree with you that these numbers are outstanding after this incredibly difficult year to see this kind of continued improvement over time. And I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to make those bars go higher as time goes on. But everybody should be very proud.
Great. Next slide. And the scores in terms of the TICI, which is a measure of the amount of reperfusion that occurs, we're now reaching 89% of patients who get treated with thrombectomy are getting substantial reperfusion. That's really what they've reached in the coronary disease world with cath for acute MI. That equates to 24,000 people in this analysis. It's only when you get to the rates of reperfusion that are that high that you start to see consistent benefit across all sites, across all operators. That tells you the technology has gotten to the place it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, these numbers are incredible and honestly better than many of the trials that were initially demonstrating that these devices work. So I think there's no question that we're benefiting patients greatly.
Great. Next slide. Getting near the end here. So this is a really important paper. I would encourage you all to read it. You probably all got downloaded an email with a link where you could take a look online. This was the result of about a year and a half of work. It began with a consensus conference at the last in-person International Stroke Conference, where we brought together leaders in pre-hospital care, emergency medicine, acute stroke, to take the pre-existing Mission Lifeline pre-hospital algorithm. It was really mostly written for an urban audience, and then we said, hey, adapt it as you need if this doesn't look like you. And we really dug in to say, what should be going on in the urban environment? What should be going on in the suburban environment? What should be going on in the rural environment? Also now factoring in thrombectomy-capable stroke centers and trying to build an easily actionable algorithm that says if I'm a paramedic and I'm in my ambulance and I've got to make some choices between a nearby acute stroke-ready hospital, a primary center that's maybe 20 minutes away, but a comprehensive that's an hour away, what am I supposed to do? And this algorithm gives people that knowledge and that understanding. And the fact that it's endorsed by so many of these major societies, I think means it will really have an impact as local health authorities try to create consistent regional stroke destination plans or transport plans. And there's some nice summary document that goes with the paper that has these pictograms that we've reproduced for you here on the slide. They're too small for you to read, but we really encourage you to take a look at that and think about that in your own community. Steve, I know you've been a recipient of this work and had a chance to look at this work come across your desk from the outside, and just would love your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. It's a great contribution. There's so many stakeholders in these kinds of decisions, and to get everybody to agree on these recommendations and to make sure that it fits the environment that people are in is really key. So I think it's going to be very helpful. It's a great thing.
Terrific. I'm not sure that might be our last slide, but let's see, Ryan, if we have another slide. Yeah, so I think, believe it or not, Steve, that brings us to the end of the slide deck. And I have to say, my voice is not as hoarse as it usually is, and I haven't had as many beers as I usually have at the end of one of these nights. But it's been really, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Would love to, share your thoughts with the audience.
Yeah, well, thanks, Lee. And I want to also thank Lisa Deck, Nancy Brown, and Nicole Sapio for sharing their perspective on the incredible success of Get With the Guideline Stroke, and obviously sharing our deep appreciation and admiration to all of you. We honestly have a lot to be proud of, and it's thanks to your incredible efforts. So on behalf of the AHA, I want to thank you for your commitment to the communities you serve and the patients that you're treating, and definitely congratulations for being recognized for delivering award-winning quality stroke care. Lee, thank you.